Three, two, one. Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy, Missy, coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. So I want to talk about how to use tube compressors on the master fader. So I got a couple of variable mute compressors I want to go over today. One is the legendary godfather, the Mafia Bus, the 670 Fairchild. And I'm also going to compare it to a hardware unit that I have right here, but it has a plugin to remote control it, which is called the West Audio Rhea. I recently just got it. We're going to see how close does the hardware come to the plugins, and I want to see what you guys have to say down below, because nowadays I feel like it's really not no excuses. This isn't really going to be a shootout, just an overall view of talking about when you would use, this type of compressor, on your overall mix, your mastering fader. Okay, so I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. If you guys do appreciate this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's jump right into it. So we're just going to go ahead and actually just play the song that we have here today, and get to listening to a little bit of music, get to going over a couple things. So yep, let's go right now. Come on.
Take it. I'm gonna take it, but fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't on for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. Money with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like Vegas, trying to run up them digits. My pocket checks, survivor the fittest. They won't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'm gonna take it, but fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't on for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. Money with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like Vegas, trying to run up them digits. My pocket checks, survivor the fittest. Chico, he saucy, you know that he sliding. For that little chance trying to cut me an island. Ain't rocking designer, but I'm still the flies. Rolling so hard, my best friend Miley Cyrus.
Okay, so one thing we always got to understand, that tubes are kind of like synonymous with the history of audio. One of the very first tube compressors was the Fairchild. That was kind of like one of the first compressors in general. But we got to think about kind of how this came about. So it was used really in broadcasting, and it's called like a compressor slash limiter kind of situation. But the thing about tubes, like for example, like a CL1B, they call it a tube tech compressor, but that's not really a tube compressor. A tube compressor is the one, variable mute compressor actually uses the actual tube to do the compression thing itself. So tubes alone, without actually using it, like the actual compression circuit, have a natural form of compression. Also we think about microphones like the Sony C800G. That's a tube microphone. People absolutely love this microphone because it has a very breathy type of high end to it that sounds very natural and not annoying, not distorted and annoying. So that's why people like using something like a Sony C800G. It actually has a pinto tube in it, which kind of gives it a little bit of that grit, interestingly enough. And then another very famous tube compressor I know that is very known well for mastering is something like the Manley variable mute tube compressor. So that's another great compressor that people like to use in mastering, but in general it's not a lot of mastering tube compressors. I was always using the Puig 670, and I feel like with the Puig 670, with using something like a variable mute compressor on your master fader, it's like it will add that brightness. A lot of the time something like a LA2A, even though it's not a tube compressor, but it got tubes on the input and output, it can really start to brighten up a sound. So usually when I use a Puig 670 on my master fader, I use it a lot on my templates as well. I also give you guys my little stock type of setup. But look though, I usually used, the Puig 670 as to get my output gain. I'm getting my dirty output gain. It gives a lot of grit, and it usually does a very good job at starting to beef up stuff like the low end, also as the vocal as well. Usually when it comes to this knob, a gem, I never think of this knob as the actual how much compression I'm doing on the vocal. Not on the vocal, how much actual compression I'm doing on the mix. I think about it I think about it in a sense of positioning. Because usually when you use like a tube compressor on your master fader, what's going to happen is going to start bringing stuff forward. It's going to start pulling the music forward. It might even start pulling the kick and the vocal forward as well. So let's just listen to how when I add a little bit of that, that compression circuit alone, like not even doing too much compression, it gives a little bit of grit, a little bit of beef.
Take it. I'm gonna take it, but fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't on for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. Money with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like Vegas, trying to run up them digits. My pocket checks, survivor the fittest. They won't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'm gonna take it, but fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't on for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. I'm with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like suckers, tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survival the fittest. Chico, he saucy, you know that he sliding. For that little chain tryna cop me an island. Ain't rockin' designer, but I'm still the flies. Rolling so hard, my best friend Miley Cyrus. This would be grinding, working, hustling. Yeah, we done got it out the muscle. I got them haters looking puzzled, man.
So just pay attention. You start to hear the kick starts to get a little heavy, starts to boom, boom. You know, it starts to get a little heavy. And I only like to ever really tap, you know, something like a Fairchild. Even back in the days when people had it, they only tap it like 1 dB because you don't want the actual release of the compression to start to be heard. Usually with like a Fairchild compressor or a lot of variable mute compressors, they usually have like a very long release. So depending, like when it comes to rap music, you might not want to be tapping it to 2 to 3 dB because then the release is going to become audible, and usually it's very, very slow. So you have the ability to adjust the time constants. So you know, usually it didn't really give you like variable attack and release settings just because of the nature of how actual tube compression works in general. You know, it's not easy to get an exact type of you know, compression attack and release time, you know. So but in general, usually tube compressors have a slow attack and a slow release. So, you know, they're pretty good for the mix bus. They let a lot of that transient, that kick, that 808, that thud come through. But then that slow release really has a beautiful way of starting to glue things together. Very, very beautiful. So another type of compressor that the people usually like to use is, you know, the Manley Verimute, which actually kind of like improved upon the design because now it did give you a little bit of control over the attack time versus where the Fairchild, it has fixed attack and release time. So that's something to pay attention to too, you know. You might want to use something like this if you want just a little bit more control. It also has like a sidechain filter in it as well. And you can go between compression and limiting modes, but sometimes people like to use variable mute mastering compressors just to get the sound of it. Sometimes I don't even compress. Just letting your mix run through it has a very beautiful way of just making the high end kind of sound a little bit magical. Even a Pultec, if you just open it up, it makes the high end sound a little bit magical. But then that kick start hitting a little bit harder. You start getting this weight, this tone, and the mid-range starts to come a little bit forward. So this is a plugin I actually just started demoing it today. I don't like to talk about stuff I don't know, so I'm not going to bring it up. You know what I mean? I just wanted to show you guys that this is also another great alternative to the Fairchild if you guys have the UAD hardware. So also I have something like the West Audio Rhea. You know, it kind of lets you go in there and get a little bit of control, the attack and the release times. You can kind of play with it, but you also have a sidechain filter, total harmonic distortion, all that stuff. Cool. So really quickly, I'm actually going to go back and forth between you know, I'm going to do like a whole little 30-second pass through the Fairchild first, and then after that we're gonna come back and show you guys what the Rhea sounds like. And in the comments down below, tell me which one you guys think sounds better, and if you had to do a scale from 1 to 10, how much of a difference do you think it is? I like to use the time constants also as well as the threshold to kind of like reposition the mix. You'll hear, like, if you get the opportunity to play around with this, like the actual positioning of like the music and the vocal will start to change when you go between the time constants and you keep the threshold very low. Just keep it very low. Try to not hit it more than 1 dB because, like I said, the release time is kind of slow, but still you get a lot of great benefits from this. Let's go ahead and listen. So I'm just gonna play the Fairchild first, then bring in the actual real hardware, which this is not just a plugin. Like, this is a remote controller for a hardware unit, which is right here, just to let you guys know. So yeah, let's go ahead and get right on top of it right now, and let's listen.
They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'm on the team, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't know for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. Mine with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like suckers, tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survival the fittest. They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'm on the team, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't know for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. I'm with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like suckers, tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survival the They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'm on the team, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't know for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. I'm with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like suckers, tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survival the fittest. They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'm on the team, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't know for the fake. They won't believe all all the money I'm getting. I'm with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like thuggin', tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survivor the They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'ma do me, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't on for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. I'm with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like thuggin', tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survivor the fittest. They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'ma do me, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it real, I ain't on for the fake. They won't believe all the money I'm getting. I'm with my brother, you know we ain't switching. Feeling like thuggin', tryna run up them digits. My pockets heavy, survivor the They don't believe all the money I'm making. Had to go get it, that shit for the taking. I'ma do me, give a fuck what they saying. Keeping it
I don't know what it is, but for me personally, most people can't tell the difference. You know, most people won't be able to tell the difference between that. You know, if you probably like were to put another plugin after the Fairchild and did like some oversampling or some brightness type of thing, it would all sound the same at the end of the day. So I want y'all to stop making excuses. The equipment don't matter. I know there is a difference. The hardware do sound a little bit better. If not really not better, not up or down, but it sounds different. It sounds a little bit more natural. It sounds a little bit more human. And I didn't even mix into the hardware. I originally used the Fairchild, so I'm only slapping this Rhea on at the last minute. I honestly can say the biggest difference of anything was in the low end. You kind of hear how the 808, it really did sound a little bit better when it went through the Rhea. The kick also sounded a little bit better as well. It's just something about the way the plugins, they don't handle the mid-range the same way that the hardware does, but it's still just as good. You know what I mean? And if you don't have a trained ear, you probably wouldn't be able to pick that up. So I just wanted to show you guys, like in this video, how great, how much of a gem that, tube compression can be in the box, but you got to stop making excuses. You know, every day you just got to keep making music and loving what you're doing, and that's more important than any equipment or anything like that. You know, like this is a really high-end boutique type of tube compressor, you know what I mean? But compared to the plugin don't really like, they kind of like in the same ballpark. They kind of sound like they're brothers. If I did a blind test, you wouldn't be able to really tell the difference that much unless you had a well-trained ear. But you got to understand, most people who listen to music, they don't have a well-trained ear. They will not be able to tell. It's always going to go off the feeling. So yeah, I mean, the hardware does give a little bit of that more humanity type of heart and soul, that little, fairy dust. Yeah, that is for sure. That is true. That is true. But honestly, whatever the plugin ain't giving you, you can compensate for that, and you can have it sounding just as good, if not better, in my opinion. Because I honestly think that plugins are better, to be honest. I've had the hardware for like 2 months now, like a month and some change actually, and I feel like the plugins are better than the hardware. But I still love the hardware because it's like a toy that you play around with, and you get to, you know what I mean? I make YouTube videos and I want to do comparisons, so it's good for me. But I feel like for most people, it won't make a difference. It won't make a difference. It does have that little humanity. You feel it in your heart just a little bit, but for most people, they ain't gonna hear the difference. If they playing it in their car or at work or whatever, they're not gonna tell the difference. So, stop making excuses, get to making music every day and love the game. So I just wanna say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. I will do a dedicated video on this beauty, the Rhea. I also got the Need 542, so, keep that checked up for it. But I just wanna say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how you feel down below. Did it make a night and day difference, or was it kind of like an incremental difference? Guys, give me a number from 1 to 10. How much of a difference was it? But I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.